Hello and welcome to the Visible Vault. I'm John Paul. I am the Keyboard Division Head. As you see my screen here, I have an empty Ableton Live project opened. It's my goal today to spend just a few minutes showing you guys a simple method of adding click and guide to the project. This is useful if you just want to add click and guide to a song, if you're running tracks for a concert or a worship set. This is an effective way to have click and guide. So I'm going to start off by just deleting a MIDI track and an audio track. So now you can see I'm left with one MIDI track and one audio track. Next, I like to make sure, since they're click and guide, I'm going to give them a consistent color, and I'm going to name my MIDI track click and my audio track guide. Let's do the click first. So I personally prefer the built-in Ableton metronome sound. So how we're going to do this is I'm actually going to add a drum rack to my click MIDI track. And if you see here, this drum rack is just an empty container, basically, with smaller empty containers inside, and you'll basically just drop your samples into one or two of these boxes. In this case, I'm going to go to metronome, and I have my two metronome samples, my accent and then my regular metronome click. So if I'm in 4/4, I'll go ahead and I can just double click on that and have a space there, a grid appears, right? And you can see here's my 1-bar loop. I've got beat 1 and then the subdivisions, beat 2, subdivisions, beat 3, and beat 4. All I have to do is click on the beats. So now, if I play that, you can see that it's just a 1-bar loop that I can drag out for however long I need to. I'm going to slow this down just a little bit. There's my global tempo up there. So here is my MIDI click track. Let's say I want to add some guide. To do this, I'm actually going to use audio samples. So for your own reference, it'll be smart to have some audio samples for your guide. I actually downloaded a number of these samples from other websites that had sample packs, and so here are a number of options that we have. Here's a voice that just says 1,
1,
or 2,
2, 3, 4.
Right. So I can use these samples to indicate the beats of the measure to cue in a certain section of the song. So if I have an intro, I'll just drag in my intro. Right? And now, since intro fell on beat 1,
2,
I'm going to drag in 2, and I'm actually going to overlap this. I can drag that in right on beat 2. So if you're paying attention to the grid, you can see where those beats are. Beat 1, beat 2 of measure 4, beat 3, and beat 4. So now I'm going to take number 3 and then number 4. And then I can even that out, highlight all of them, and then you can actually consolidate into one file there.
Intro 2, 3, 4.
So there I've added my intro cue with my click.
Intro 2, 3, 4.
Right. So I want to show you guys real quick how this would fit into another project. So here, earlier in my electronic music class that I teach, I actually put together just this small loop here. So you can see I've got a few tracks here with some samples, and there's a basic structure to it. I've got locators in here labeling my intro, my chorus, my verse. I've got a bridge section. This was just a simple example that we threw together in class. So what I'm going to do to start is I'm going to collapse all of these tracks, because we're not necessarily going to be working in these, and I'm going to do that same process. I'm going to add an audio track, and then I'm going to add a MIDI track. I'll make them a consistent color, kind of set apart. And I'm going to name my audio track guide and my MIDI track click. Okay. So what I'll do is I've got my grid there. You can just double click on that to have an empty grid. Now I'm going to insert my drum rack instrument and then go to my metronome samples. Oops. So I can drag that. And then I can go back here and I've got my beat 1, beat 2, beat 3, and beat 4 for my one measure loop right there. And all I have to do is plug in these samples right there. Now I've got right, so you could hear the click very lightly underneath. So now all I've got to do is drag this track out as long as I need to, and I'm actually going to add some basic effects to it just to help improve the volume. So I'll add a little bit of compression and kind of help it with the overall volume of the mix. There's another effect that also helps. The saturator, a bit warmer setting, also helps. If you just increase the drive just a little bit, now you can start to hear that click just a little bit better in the mix. The next step is your guide. So I'm going to go to a measure before my intro section because I'm going to use this guide to cue in the sections of my song here. All I'm going to do is go to my guide samples, find where it says intro, drag that into measure 1,
2,
so then this is going to be beat 2,
3,
beat 3,
4,
and then beat 4. So what I can do, you don't have to do this, but for cleanliness, I can consolidate into a new track.
intro 2, 3, 4.
So now I'm one measure before my verse section. So I'll find verse.
Verse.
And I'll drag that there. And then
2, 3,
last one.
4. Verse 2, 3, 4.
So now I've got my chorus section.
Chorus.
And then 2, 3, and 4.
2, 3, 4. Chorus 2, 3, 4.
So then you can see it comes into a bridge section. So we'll just do this one too.
Bridge.
Got bridge. And then 2, 3, and 4. And since I didn't consolidate these, I can just copy and paste these.
Bridge 2, 3, 4.
Right. So then I can do the same thing for my chorus, but I've already got my cue right there. So I'll go ahead and copy that and then paste it here. Right. And it does say final chorus. So if I wanted to, I could have a sample that said final chorus, or I could have chorus 1, chorus 2, that sort of thing. Then I've got my outro. So what I'll do here is I'm actually going to paste the same thing and then delete this and find where it says outro.
Outro.
Let me do it this way. This will be so do it that way. Highlight those and just drag them in here. One of the things you got to do is make sure you're properly zoomed in on the grid. So then they'll line up on those subdivisions.
Outro 2, 3, 4.
And there you go. You've got your click and your guide added to your song. There is one other small step, and that has to do with audio routing, because if you are going to perform this with Ableton Live and have this connected to the main system of the house, you don't want your click and your guide coming through the master track. So what I'll do is I'll switch over to session view, and I'll show you actually have a cue out and a master out. And this is a tool within Ableton to route certain tracks to a cue out and then others to the regular master. So if you had an audio interface connected to your computer, you could route whichever input you wanted that was activated to your cue out, and then send your click and guide to the cue out, while the rest go to another output assigned to your master track, your master output, and that would go to the house. That way you won't send your click and guide to the house. Otherwise, this is how you do it. Click and guide in your track. I plan to be putting out more of these videos in the future with Ableton tutorials, and so be on the lookout for more in the future.